I've been teaching at William & Mary and George Washington now this is my third year, and I have 20-somethings, as I call them, in my seminars, graduates and undergraduates. And I think the answer to that question is yes and no. Yes, in the sense that there are a lot of people in America who don't know what our values are anymore. And that's part of the failure of our public education system. When someone, for example, doesn't even know really what the United States Constitution says, or how it sets up our government, or how that's evolved over time, that's a real failure in what I call civics education, which I find all across the country as I travel now is something people look at you and say, what? We don't do anymore. The other aspect of it is that even if you can impart the kind of education that I think should be imparted to our young people throughout, not just when they arrive at William & Mary or GW, you have to give them a real-world flavor of what it means to adhere to those values and why those values are sacrosanct, why those values in some sense are more important than our security. That's a difficult thing to do, particularly when they've seen the scenes of 9/11 and other things that might be contemplated. We talk about a nuclear strike. That seemed to have fixated Mr. Cheney, for example. It so fixated him that I think he became somewhat paranoid in the aftermath of that thought. He even went to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta when he learned about the potential for smallpox. Came back and for 2 weeks was fixated on inoculating every American citizen. And so some very capable physicians and others advised him that not only was that not logical, it was perhaps dangerous. So these kinds of things can affect your thinking and get you off what is really, I think, an axiom, and that is our security is not worth our liberty. There are many Americans who will sit and talk with me all across the country. California, Michigan, Texas, they've done it over the last 3 years as I've traveled, and tell me I'm wrong, and tell me that their security is far more important than their liberty. Well, they haven't had their liberty threatened lately, not in the sense that, for example, Europe had its liberties threatened when Hitler was rolling. This is not Hitler, Al-Qaeda. The other aspect of it is, if you take the example of the American Republic, which after all sprang from your own country, if you take Magna Carta forward and the evolution of those ideas, the evolution of that process of governance, the evolution of those values, you bury bin Laden and Zawahiri and everybody else. You don't need bombs, bullets, and bayonets. All you need is your ideas. But you need to be an exemplar of those ideas. That's the way to defeat these kind of people. They aren't anywhere close to what the Soviet Union was. But insidiously, they could do a hell of a lot more damage to us by our reaction to them than the Soviet Union could do. And that's the kind of idea that you try to impart, or I try to impart to these students. And I think it needs to be imparted to a lot more than just my students. And the answer to the question, I think, is that yes, our values are extremely important, and we need a few refresher courses in them.